Cheers, Kampai, Salute, Gambe, Skål, Prost. Hello, and welcome to the Drunken Storytellers podcast, where I tell folktales and folklore from around the globe. So sit back, grab yourself a drink, and enjoy the show. Hello, and welcome to episode 7 of the Drunken Storyteller. So I'm a bit late. I had technical issues just then, so everything's gone a bit haywire. Because apparently everything didn't want to pick up my mic, so I do apologise. I am here now. I'm a few minutes late, but whatever. So, before I go on and spiel about things, a little bit odd this week, due to random stuff happening, like feeling a bit grotty for various reasons. I am drinking some orange juice rather than my usual beverages, but I'll try and keep up the snarky comments as I usually do, so don't worry about it too much. So, why is this not working? My computer seems to be acting really slowly at the moment. I think I've got too many things going on at the moment in the background. But yeah, obviously there was no episode last week, and that was for various reasons. That was one, stress of work and stuff happening, and other things were that as I've been blabbering on about for the last God knows how long, Virtual HorrorCon was last weekend, so I was prepping stuff for that. The two things that I was meant to be prepping for, though, the two games that I was running didn't actually happen. Again, because of all the work stuff and things that were going on. So they will happen at some point, though not sure when. There are plans afoot, and they will happen. So yes, they will also hopefully be streamed. Whereas the original plan was they weren't going to be streamed, but I have plans with people to do some streaming of things and Vessen and Folklore and stuff, and I'm well excited. So yeah, where am I in my notes? I have actually written notes here, and I'm just kind of rambling because I was trying to sort some stuff out just then. So yes, other than not doing those games that I'd intended to run, VHC was actually friggin' amazing. Virtual HorrorCon was amazing. I did get to play in the game, so that was good. I got to play a rather angry werewolf who just liked to go and randomly jump at people in a game of Urban Shadows 2nd edition. So Urban Shadows is a dark fantasy game. Really good. It was great fun. Modern fantasy. Played a grumpy werewolf. They get belly rubs. I do get belly rubs, which was quite fun. And there's a hell crack. There's lots of hell crack. Hell crack for the world, I think, can be nicknamed that one. That game can be nicknamed hell crack. So and then there were a couple of panels that I was on, and a couple of other panels and things that I watched, which were amazing. The things so I did run that folklore panel that I was talking about. That was amazing. I tried not to fanboy over Mark a little bit, but yeah, we talked about all manner of stuff, and it was brilliant and was really well received. That will be going up on Gehenna Gaming's YouTube at some point in the next month or so, and I will link to that when it goes up. But yeah, we all had a great little chat and answered some questions from the audience and stuff, and we were talking about all different things related to folklore and gaming in folklore and stuff. So, and we gushed over Vessen and how good it is as well. So woo. Yeah, I did a mini painting tutorial stream thing with Chris from Dark Days in the Saturday morning, which was basically when nobody was awake to watch it because it's run in America, and it was even a little bit early for us, even though we were in England. What else was I on? What else did I do? I think that was it all that I was on. But yeah, so there was a really cool panel on occultism and ritual magic with some really cool people on there, which is great. And again, all of the panels and things and live stream games will be up on YouTube at some point. So you can actually go and catch all that stuff up, or you can go onto the Gehenna Gaming Twitch and watch them on VOD. So they are still there, and there's also stuff on Carrying Comfort Studios and Darker Days Radio Twitch streams. If you want some of the other weird stuff that they did, so I would recommend it. But yes, so there are plans afoot for some Folklore Vessen streamed games at some point, and maybe I'll do it on my Twitch. So some Scottish themed stuff there, and I think there's going to be some German fairy tales and maybe some American folktale related stuff with Vessen. We'll see how it works. But yeah, so there's some interesting plans afoot with that. So we'll see what goes on with that. Anyway, I've rambled enough for 5 minutes or so on absolutely nothing. As per usual, yeah. Isn't that good? But yeah, it was friggin' amazing. I had so much fun that weekend. And I was awake until about 5 o'clock Monday morning watching random games. Aliens Run as a Jurassic Park game was really fun. Anyway, enough of my ramblings and on to the episode. So, as you may have guessed by the rest of the title, for some reason Twitch is showing this still as Prague, a city of clay. It's not that. I don't know why that's doing that. Unless I'm just watching the wrong thing. No, it's still showing it as Prague, a city of clay. I apologise for anybody who's watching this on Twitch. That's not right. The episode title is actually all about those large buggers that generally like to go around and smash things and steal people away and eat chickens and are generally really big and angry and scary and steal people. And so yeah, I couldn't think of a snarky title for this episode, so I actually just called it Giants and VHC. And yes, it's about giants. Surprise, surprise. So, apparently I'm going to change styles again. I don't think I am. I think this is generally going to be following roughly the same format as our recent episodes. I'm going to talk about them, and then I'm going to read a story. There's only going to be one story, so don't get too excited about that, but I am going to mumble on about giants for a little bit, butcher some words, and just kind of generally just talk crap. So enjoy the crap! Yay! So, dumb question time. What is a giant? I hear you ask. Well, if you don't know what a giant is, then where the fuck have you been for the last millennia or so? But yeah, in the context of folklore, what is a giant? I should really say. So in folklore and myths and legends, they're generally creatures which have human form but superhuman size. As if you couldn't guess. But yeah, so the word giant comes from the Greek gigantes or gigantes or gigantes. It's a Greek word from ancient Greek mythology. I'm not a language expert. But yeah, Greek mythology, who also have a lot of giants in them, and even bigger things commonly known as titans, and these things are big bastards. But we're not going to look at Greek mythology today, so sorry. Apparently the first time the word appeared in the English language, though, was kind of around the 13th century. Should not try and do these things when you're feeling a bit crappy. So yeah. First appeared in the English language in the 13th century, and it comes via Greek, via Latin and French. Most English words come from elsewhere, so there's no surprise there. Yeah, English language is basically a bastardized amalgamation of many European languages with a few of our own words. We like to steal words, and if you look at the English history, we steal a lot of other things as well. But we're not going to the British Museum in Egypt and things like that. Anyway, so this is what I find quite nice about the word giant. It replaced the old English word ent or Yoten. So, which I think we should bring back, because ent, as much as it was kind of cool in Lord of the Rings, I think ent as a term for giant is kind of cool. or a big tree spirit kind of thing. I don't know. So, on a side note, gigantism is also a medical condition that does exist, and it causes people to grow over 7 feet tall. And it could be one of the kind of roots of where the word comes from. Not gigantism, but the disease making people big and giant could also kind of reflect maybe a little bit of where the thing comes from, but probably not. And I'll kind of go through that just now as to where some people think giants come from and the meanings behind them. And again, I'm just rambling shit here. Some of this I've looked up, so I apologise to anybody who's listening and actually knows more than me, which is probably a lot of you. So, in folklore, giants are a simple concept on the surface. Simple. They are large, scary creatures that cause terror and destruction, which is kind of true. In most fairy tales and folklores that you hear about giants, they do cause a lot of destruction. Though there are some where they are quite nice and friendly. And kind of what you see with a lot of folklore as well, that it slowly changes over time. So the church gets more power. You start to see this kind of flip in folklore of certain things being nice and calm and friendly, and it switches over to them being kind of more evil and malevolent as we kind of go through. And the same thing happens with witches quite a lot. As the church kind of gets more power and more influence and tries to control people more, it shifts the focus to some extent of the meanings behind things, as it's just trying to grab power. I'm not going to get into religious discussions, but we do in folklore see this kind of morphing of ideas and creatures within it. So, but yeah, cool. So on a deeper level though, giants, we're talking about giants, not religion. Giants, big, grub, angry things. Yeah, on a deeper level, they represent the frailty of the human condition and our mortality, because there are things out there that can hurt us, and they are big and they are scary. And when we were living in villages in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by woods and creatures and things, that things hunted us as well. And some of those things that hunted us looked human. Because probably some of them were human. But also, here's a thought. Could there be a relation to the uncanny valley here? That unnerving thing of something looking like what we expect it to. So humans hunting humans. Anyway, that might be something to look at. I don't know. I could be talking out my ass, which is probably more than likely, and it's probably just what I do anyway, isn't it? I talk out my ass. Hi, whoever Clueless Mo is. You know who I am. Who are you? If you're still watching. Right, anyway. What else have we got going on here? Giants also appear all over the globe in folklore. So they are quite well known, obviously, within England and Europe. So it's a simplistic idea of a big ass scary monster. I'm warm. Yeah, baby. Yeah, so it's a big ass scary creature who goes big bash bosh and smashes things around. So we have things like the classic tale of Jack the Giant Killer, like one of the most famous stories out there, kind of morphed into Jack and the Beanstalk and things like that. So you do see them in quite a lot of pop culture as well. But we also have tales from nearly every country. I think that should say county. But anyway, so we have tales from nearly every county that include giants. And we have, in England, we have the great Gog Magog. I love that name, Gog Magog. Who doesn't like a good Gog Magog? He was slew by the Trojans and yeeted off a cliff into Cornwall. Into Cornwall? No, into the sea in Cornwall. And the Trojans came along, they slew all the giants, they slew Gog Magog, who was the leader of the giants. They yeeted him off a cliff, and the Trojans founded Avalon. And that's a really cool story, which I will talk about one day. And I'll also talk about where the giant race came from in the British Isles, because that's a cool story as well. It involves witches and all sorts of weird stuff, and Persians and ladies, and yeah. So yeah. Also, won't go into the connotations that the Avalon and the great, is it Avalon? Do I mean Avalon? I don't know. Anyway, the great British early thing that we were made from the Greeks. We're actually descendants of Greeks, so screw you people who worship George and the Dragon and say England, rah. No, according to myth and legends, we're Greeks. There's a weird thing for you. And the giants are Persians. As I said, I think I said this earlier, but I'm almost certain I said this earlier, not all giants are evil. Some of them are actually quite nice, and they are helpful, and some of them are even great kings of England. And one of the greatest kings of England, you can look at someone called let's see if I can get this right, it's a Welsh name, Bendigeidfran, or Bran the Blessed Crow, who in the second branch of the Mabinogion, read the Mabinogion, it's awesome. He walks across the Irish Sea to free his sister Branwen. He literally just kind of gets up and walks through the ocean, keeping his head above the water. So he big. They also use his head, I think, at some point to cross a river. He lies down across a river and his army marches across him. And the Irish have to build him a massive house or something. He's big. He is a literal giant, and he's a king of England, and he does some cool stuff, and then his head gets chopped off and talks to people for 80 years, and it all goes a bit weird. It's a bit like a trippy dream at the end, that bunch. But anyway, I will look into the Mabinogion again at some point. I'll break it down into the 4 branches and then all the many other stories that are actually part of it. A lot of people only ever think that the Mabby is four branches, but there's lots of other extra small little stories on top of it. But anyway, I digress. I need to be talking about giants, not one of my favourite mythology books. As mentioned, there are giants from all over the place. So we've got giants from the Mediterranean countries. So obviously we've got Greek mythologies where we've got the Titans, who try to overthrow Mount Olympus, and the race of Cyclops as well. So they're kind of like one-eyed giants. There exists in the Roman tales with Jupiter fighting them. So there are Roman giants. There's giants in Catalonia that date back. There are statues of the giants in Catalonia that date back to the 14th century that represent historical figures and villages. It'd be kind of cool to look at some Spanish or Catalonia folklore and folk tales. It's not something I really have ever looked at. Spain. It's not really a country that I associate with folklore, but I imagine it's got some amazing stories. Anyway, next up we have probably where most people know giants from, and that is the Yoten of Nordic mythology. And their never-ending humiliation at being defeated by Thor in various feats of strength and wars and battles and things, and drinking competitions where he drinks an ocean and lifts up a cat. So they come in. They come in a few different flavors in the sagas and the Eddas. So you've got the massive, imposing frost giants. This is where I'm going to start butchering names. So I've got the names written down here. In Norse. I'm going to try and pronounce them, and I'm going to butcher them, so I apologise. But I think it's kind of interesting to see if I can. So, frost giants. Hrimthusar. The fire giants. I can't actually read what I've written here. Eldjotna. And the mountain giants. Bergrisar. So there you go. That's what they're called. So you've got frost, fire, and mountain giants. And also, in the Nordic mythology, you see Loki is technically a frost giant. He is adopted by Odin. He is found as a child alone. I think Odin kills his mother, maybe? And Odin adopts him, and he's the brother of Thor, or step-brother of Thor. But there's also, beyond just the Eddas and the Havamal and things, there are folk tales of giants living across the Scandic lands. So you'll get them in the villages and things across Norway, Sweden, and all the other Scandinavian countries, even up into the one right at the top, Finland. I know my geography. I will definitely look into probably the folktale versions of giants in Scandinavia at some point. I will do some stuff on the Viking. Well, I won't. I'm not going to use the word Viking on the Norse Eddas and sagas and things. I was listening to the latest episode of not the latest episode, the episode before of the Folklore podcast, where Mark talks to Einar, the lead singer of Wardruna. Einar makes the specific comment that he does not refer to his music as Viking; he refers to it as Nordic. And I should try and get into the head that these are Nordic tales; they are not Viking tales. But anyway, beyond Europe, we also have giants outside of Europe, even though they are mostly associated with European mythology. We do see them in Asia. So as always, we go to my favourite, Japan, and you can kind of consider the Oni to be giants in some respect. So they're big, scary ass creatures who like to bash humans over the head with massive iron clubs. The direct kind of translation though is more of ogre or troll, and in a way they are kind of more ogreish and troll-like, but they are also massive. They are generally 8 to 12 feet tall, and generally not very nice. They are very strong, and as they carry heavy clubs. And if you want to hear a tale and maybe meet one, go to episode 1 and listen to the story which I wrote. There might be one in that. So where else have we got? Oh, there's a fun tale that involves an Oni, I should say, and that's of the Inch Boy, who is a small boy who was eaten by the ogre and fights his way out of the stomach using a pin. So that's kind of fun. You know, like stabbing the belly of the Oni with a pin from the inside and bursts out of his belly. Kind of alien-like. Ooh, maybe we're giants to aliens, and the only reason they eat us is because we used to eat them. Ooh, no, ignore that. Anyway, while I was looking at this, I found something that I'd never heard before, and there appears to be kind of only one English translation of this that I can find. And it's a story from Indonesia called Tutumu, and Tutumu and the Giant, and I really like that name, Tutumu. But it's a girl called Tutumu who is eaten by a giant, and the mother cuts it open to free her. And then, kind of like you see in the Inch Boy and Tutumu, they're a little bit like the Little Red Riding Hood in a way. You've got to cut someone open to free them, cut the bad thing open to free the person who got eaten. So yeah. Right, where are we now? Okay, we're now moving on to modern tales to some extent. So this is something that I kind of looked at as a result of the folklore panel I did for Virtual HorrorCon. We got asked a question: is there any American folklore, or is America old enough to have folklore and things? And yes, America does have folklore, and it's not just the Native Americans who have the folklore, but also the white colonial fucknut Americans. I'm not insulting Americans here. There are some very nice Americans out there, and I have some very good friends who are Americans, but I'm trying to say, like the people who moved in on the land and aren't Native Americans, they have created their own folklore, and there are some folk tales and things in it. There's a lot of folk horror, there's gothic, there's a lot of American gothic stuff out there which can be considered folklore. And if you listen to the latest episode, I'm plugging this a lot, but the latest episode of the Folklore podcast, Mark talks about Bernie's mittens, which are now modern folklore. They are effectively folklore. And you've also got things like Slender Man is considered folklore as well, even though we know exactly when and where that was created. We even know the person who invented it. So, but yeah, anyway, so American folklore. There are a few kind of mentions of giants, though they are generally referred to as big men rather than giants in American folklore. So you've got the most famous lumberjack to have ever existed, Paul Bunyan, and his friend, and I love this name, Babe the Blue Ox. He has a massive blue ox and he's called it Babe. I'm just like, alright Babe, how's it going? It's like proper, yeah, anyway. Then there's also John Henry and Pecos Bill. who is a cowboy. So there are two kind of less well-known ones there. John Henry is kind of a minor steel drill driver thing related to the slave trade. There's a little bit of iffiness going around on that one. And Pecos Bill is a kind of takes on the what do you want to call it? Takes on the idea of the wild child, I suppose, the wild boy image. He gets lost in the wild and is raised by coyotes. He's then found by his brother and is raised a cowboy and things. So I'm actually, as a result of that panel, I want to do a couple of episodes on American folklore and actually look into it and kind of see where it is, because it's kind of interesting. A lot of it has arisen from the Pilgrims and all the immigrants from Europe who came over there, and there's also, obviously, you're going to have folklore that's come across from the slave trade, and so it has a very weird mix of tales. I suppose you can kind of look at something like the Candyman movies as well. It kind of relates to it. So, but obviously, I'm going to touch it with very ginger gloves because there are connotations and connections to some very nasty things in that, and it's kind of why I've stepped away from certain areas before, because things like the Mesoamerican tales and the Native American tribes and things, I'm reluctant to look into those for various reasons. But yeah, I could spend quite a lot of time kind of delving into the details of different countries and areas that talk about giants and things, but I don't want to do that because otherwise then I'd have nothing for another episode. But yeah, so we also have this was one of the stories that I was going to tell, but I'm not going to for various reasons. Basically, it was too much effort to put a story together on it in the limited time that I had, and that was the tale of Kumbakama, who is a Hindi god who fights in a battle and is killed and stuff, kind of called the giant demon, or the demon giant, I can't remember, but I didn't look into it enough to actually write a story about it. But it seemed quite cool, and I did want to kind of delve in again into something non-European, but again, time and other things kind of got in the way. But then what else have we got written down here before I kind of sign off? So the only other thing that I kind of want to mention, which I found quite interesting while I was looking this up, is that is the kind of religious connection that I talked about a little bit earlier with the religion. There's a well-known word that is often connected to angels that actually has more of a connection when you look into it to giants, and that is Nephilim. Nephilim are giants, and there's a connection with something called the Book of Giants, which is a Judaic book, I suppose. Connections with the book, the Dead Sea Scrolls and things. I didn't look into it too much, but there are connections there with the Nephilim and giants. And maybe one day I'll look into that. Whether I do it as a kind of thing on religion, or whether I do it as a thing on giants and look at just Nephilim anyway, because I just like the name Nephilim. But yeah, so anyway, that's it for this part of the episode. If you want to actually hear a tale of a giant, and it's kind of a cool tale of a giant, I'm not going to tell you what it is. You're going to have to listen to the podcast. So, anyway, as I say, that's it for this episode. So please like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Rate and leave a comments on the podcast if you do listen to it, especially if you listen to it on Apple. The best way to get Apple listeners for me is if you rate it and leave a comment. Same thing with YouTube. Like, subscribe, share it around, all that malarkey. I have discovered, though, that Virtual HorrorCon has given me a fair few more listens, so that's kind of nice. But please do still share it around and let people know how shit I am at this. Where else can you find me? You can find me over on Twitter at TheDrunkenStore1, and store is STOR1 because fuck Twitter. I'm posting a little bit more at the moment, and it does kind of cross over with my gaming stuff as well. So well. You can find me on Facebook at The Drunken Storyteller. You can email me at thedrunkenstorytelleruk@gmail.com for suggestions on topics and stories to cover and talk about. As I say, do follow me on Spotify, Apple, and wherever else it is, Podbean and things that you do. Recommend me to friends and all that kind of crap. Also, you can go check me out on my other podcast over at Darker Days Radio, where I talk about horror-themed RPGs, mainly based in the world of Darkness and Chronicles of Darkness. And we do talk about Warhammer RPGs as well. We are still doing our Enemy Within campaign over on Gehenna Gaming on Twitch. First 2 episodes are still on YouTube. I'm guessing the rest will appear at some point. God knows when. They've got to get through Virtual HorrorCon first. But yeah, I might be appearing on Gehenna Gaming again at some point with some gaming stuff. I don't know. I've got plans and I need to talk to them. But yeah, go check out Gehenna Gaming as well, because they're amazing. And also go check out Carrying Comfort Studios, because Wes is a nut job. The idea at Virtual HorrorCon was that they were raising money for charity. They were if they got their $2,000 mark, Wes from Carrying Comfort and Ian from Gehenna Gaming were going to chug a bottle of hot sauce. They didn't make it. I think they got to 1,200. But Wes being Wes, he necked a bottle of hot sauce anyway. Because, Wes is ace. But yeah, so for me, that's it for this episode, this part of the episode. It's been wonderful speaking to you all. I hope you have not learnt anything. And I will see you all in the next one. Or over on the podcast. Join me there. Cheers! Kampai! Salute! Gambe! Skål! Prost! Hello, and welcome to the Drunken Storytellers podcast, where I tell folktales and folklore from around the globe. So sit back, grab yourself a drink, and enjoy the show.